In the unforgiving lands of the Arizona Territory, a deadly mistake is about to unfold. When the notorious Carson gang decides to mock a quiet stranger at their saloon, they think they're dealing with just another weary drifter. They couldn't be more wrong. John Rivers isn't your typical wanderer. For 15 years, he's been the most feared gunslinger in the West, leaving a trail of empty boots and wooden crosses from Texas to California. His nickname is Ghost, a shadow that appears without warning and delivers death with unfailing accuracy. This is not just another tale of frontier justice. This is about how the most dangerous outlaws in Arizona learned the hard way that some legends are born in blood and written in lead. When they decided to make an example of him, they didn't realize they were challenging the man who'd gunned down the infamous Thompson gang single-handed at Yellow Fork. What follows is the story of how one legendary gunslinger would dismantle the most powerful outlaw empire in the territory, armed with nothing but his lightning-fast draw, deadly accuracy, and a reputation that makes hardened killers tremble. But even ghosts can bleed, and before this war is over, Redemption Creek will learn why some men are worth fearing and some fights are worth dying for. The dust had barely settled on Main Street when the stranger rode into Redemption Creek. His black duster was weathered by 1,000 miles of hard riding, and his dark hat pulled low against the merciless Arizona sun. The townspeople watched from behind drawn curtains and half-closed doors as his stallion's hooves kicked up clouds in the parched earth. It was high noon, and the saloon was the only building showing any real signs of life. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace that belied his trail-worn appearance, his movements precise and controlled. No wasted motion, no hesitation. He tied his horse to the post, giving the animal a gentle pat before ascending the wooden steps to the saloon's entrance. Inside, the usual afternoon crowd of the Carson brothers gang fell silent. These men owned Redemption Creek in all but name, their influence bought with lead and blood. Jake Carson, the youngest of the three brothers, sneered from his poker table as the stranger made his way to the bar. "Whiskey," the stranger said, his voice quiet but carrying across the room like distant thunder. The bartender, old Tom Wilson, hurried to comply, his hands shaking slightly as he poured the drink. "Ain't seen you round these parts before," Jake called out, pushing back his chair. His brothers, Bill and Marcus, exchanged knowing grins. They'd seen this scene play out before, some drifter wandering in, not knowing whose territory he'd stumbled into. The stranger didn't respond, didn't even turn around. He just lifted his glass and took a measured sip. Jake's face reddened. "I'm talking to you, mister. Might be polite to answer when a man addresses you." "Might be polite to let a man drink in peace," the stranger replied, still not turning. The saloon grew quieter still, if that was possible. Even the flies seemed to stop buzzing. Jake Carson wasn't used to being talked back to, not in Redemption Creek. "Boys," Jake said, standing now, "I think our friend here needs a lesson in manners." Two of the gang members moved to flank the stranger, their hands hovering near their holsters. The stranger set his glass down slowly, deliberately. For the first time, the afternoon light caught his face as he turned, and several people gasped. His eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky, but it was the scar that drew their attention, a jagged line running from his left temple to his jaw. Those eyes surveyed the room with cold precision, marking each armed man, each potential threat. "I know you," the bartender suddenly whispered, his face going pale. "Lord help us, I know who you are." Jake Carson laughed, but there was uncertainty in it now. "Well, don't keep us in suspense, Tom. Who's our mysterious friend?" Before Tom could answer, the stranger spoke. "Name's Rivers. John Rivers." He paused, letting the name sink in. "Some folks call me Ghost." The effect was immediate. Two of the gang members actually stepped back. Even Jake Carson's sneer faltered. Everyone in the West knew that name, knew the stories. John Ghost Rivers, the man who'd never lost a gunfight, never missed a shot. The man who'd taken down the entire Thompson gang single-handed at Yellow Fork, but Jake Carson was young, proud, and stupid. His hand twitched toward his gun. "Well, Mr. Rivers," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "ghost or not, you're in Carson territory now." Rivers turned back to his drink, his voice carrying that same quiet thunder. "Son, I suggest you think very carefully about your next move. Your father would be mighty disappointed to have to bury his youngest." The saloon held its breath, waiting to see if Jake Carson was really fool enough to draw on John Rivers. Jake Carson's decision came in the form of trembling fingers and wounded pride. The youngest Carson brother had spent his entire life watching men back down at the mere mention of his family name. Now, with every eye in the saloon on him, he couldn't let this stranger, legend or not, walk away untested. His hand moved for his gun. What happened next would be retold in whispers across Redemption Creek for years to come. Before Jake's fingers could close around his revolver's grip, Rivers moved. The motion was so fluid, so blindingly fast, that many would later swear they never saw him draw. One moment his hand was empty, the next his Colt gleamed in the dusty sunlight streaming through the saloon windows. 2 shots rang out, so close together they sounded like a single thunderclap. Jake's gun, half drawn, went spinning across the floor, a precise shot having struck it at the hammer. The second bullet had threaded an impossible path between Jake's arm and torso, leaving a neat hole in his expensive coat without drawing blood. "That was your warning," Rivers said quietly, his gun unwavering. "The next one won't be." Bill Carson, the eldest brother, had his own weapon half raised. "You're dead, Rivers. Nobody touches my brother." "Your brother's alive because I chose not to kill him," Rivers replied, his winter blue eyes shifting to Bill. "Drop it, or I'll put the next one between your eyes." The saloon had become a powder keg with Rivers at its center. 5 more gang members had their hands on their weapons, but none dared draw. They'd all heard the stories of Yellow Fork, how Rivers had faced down 12 of the Thompson gang's best shooters. None had survived to tell their side of the tale. Marcus Carson, the middle brother and the smartest of the 3, slowly raised his hands. "Easy now, everyone. Let's not do anything foolish." His eyes never left Rivers' gun. "Bill, lower your weapon. Jake, get up slowly." Jake Carson stumbled to his feet, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. His prized gun lay useless on the floor, its hammer shattered by Rivers' impossible shot. "This ain't over," Jake spat, clutching his ruined coat. "It can be," Rivers said, his voice carrying that same deadly calm. "Walk away now. Learn from it. Live to see tomorrow. Or don't." His gaze swept the room. "That goes for all of you." Bill Carson slowly lowered his gun, but his eyes burned with murderous intent. "You've just signed your death warrant, Rivers. Might be today, might be next week, but you're a dead man walking." "Been dead for years," Rivers replied. "That's why they call me Ghost." He backed toward the door, his gun still covering the room with unwavering precision. No one moved to stop him. Outside, his black stallion waited patiently, as if knowing its master would return unscathed. Rivers mounted smoothly, keeping one eye on the saloon entrance. As he turned his horse toward the street, old Tom the bartender hurried out. "Mr. Rivers," he called softly, "the Carsons. They won't let this stand. They own this town, got 40 riders at their ranch, and friends in every territory." Rivers looked down at the old man, the scar on his face catching the afternoon light. "Then it's time someone showed them they don't own anything but boot leather and borrowed time." He rode out slowly, deliberately, his back straight and proud. The townspeople watched from their windows, knowing they had just witnessed the opening shots of a war that would change Redemption Creek forever. Inside the saloon, Jake Carson nursed his wounded pride while his brothers conferred in low voices. They had built their empire through violence and fear, but now they faced something different, a legend made flesh, a man whose very name made hardened killers check their shadows. The ghost had come to Redemption Creek, and blood would soon follow. Rivers rode until sunset, making camp in a sheltered canyon away from the main trail. As he sat beside his small fire, memories he'd long tried to bury rose unbidden, brought forth by the day's events. The flames cast dancing shadows across his scarred face as his mind drifted back 15 years. He'd been John Rivers then, just a simple rancher with a wife named Sarah and a young daughter, Emily. Their small spread in Texas had been everything he'd ever wanted. Sarah's laugh could make flowers grow, and Emily's smile brightened even the darkest days. They'd been happy, peaceful, until the Blackwood gang rode through. The gang had wanted their land for a smuggling route. When Rivers refused to sell, they'd returned one night while he was in town getting supplies. He still remembered the smoke rising against the evening sky, the desperate ride home, the horror of what he found. Sarah had fought back. The empty shotgun in her hands proved that. Emily had hidden just like they'd taught her. It hadn't been enough. By the time he'd arrived, the house was ablaze, and his family. Rivers closed his eyes against the memory, his hand unconsciously touching the scar on his face. The Blackwoods had left him for dead, a bullet in his chest and a knife wound across his face. But hate is a powerful medicine, and John Rivers refused to die. For 2 years, he'd learned the gun, every day, every hour, until his hands bled and his eyes burned. He studied with former soldiers, aging gunfighters, anyone who could teach him the art of dealing death. The quiet rancher died during those years, replaced by something harder, colder. The Thompson gang had been his first real test. They'd worked with the Blackwoods, helped plan the raid that destroyed his family. Rivers had tracked them to Yellow Fork, 12 hardened killers who thought themselves untouchable. "Remember Yellow Fork?" he asked his horse softly. The animal's ears twitched at his voice. 12 men, all killers, all fast with a gun. They never stood a chance. That day had birthed the legend of the ghost. No one had ever seen shooting like it. Precise, methodical, unstoppable. Some said he'd killed them all in less than a minute. Others swore the Thompson gang had fired 100 shots without hitting him once. The truth was simpler and more terrible. He'd studied them for weeks, learning their habits, their weaknesses. When he finally moved, it was with the cold precision of an executioner. Not one of his bullets had been wasted, not one shot had missed its mark. After Yellow Fork came other battles, other legends. The ghost became a name whispered around campfires, a shadow that haunted the dreams of evil men. Some said he couldn't be killed. Others claimed he was vengeance itself, given form and fury. Rivers poked at his fire, watching sparks rise into the darkening sky. The Carsons were different from the others, more organized, more connected. They had money, influence, and an army of gunmen at their command. But they had made the same mistake as all the rest. They had shown him what they were, revealed their true nature as men who preyed on the weak, just like the Blackwoods had all those years ago. From his saddlebag, Rivers withdrew a worn photograph. In the fading light, Sarah and Emily's faces smiled up at him, forever frozen in happiness. He touched the image gently, remembering Sarah's last words to him that morning. "Come home safe, my love." "I'm sorry," he whispered to the photograph. "I know you wouldn't want this life for me, but some debts can only be paid in blood." Tomorrow he would return to Redemption Creek. The Carsons would come for him. Pride and fear would give them no choice. And when they did, they would learn why the ghost was the most feared name in the West. Rivers tucked the photograph away and lay back, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there he hoped Sarah and Emily could forgive what he'd become. Until then, he would continue his lonely crusade, bringing justice to a lawless land, one bullet at a time. Marshal David Cooper stood at his office window, watching John Rivers ride back into Redemption Creek as the morning sun painted the streets gold. In 20 years of wearing the badge, Cooper had seen his share of gunslingers, but none quite like Rivers. There was something different about him, a coldness in those pale eyes that spoke of depths of pain and violence most men couldn't fathom. "Damn fool Carsons," Cooper muttered, adjusting his gun belt. "Had to go and poke a sleeping bear." His deputy, young Jimmy Hawkins, looked up from his desk. "You really think he's him, Marshal, the ghost?" "Saw him once, 6 years back in Texas," Cooper replied, his weathered face grim. "Watched him take down 3 of the meanest gunmen I'd ever seen without breaking a sweat. Man moves like a rattler and shoots straighter than God's own justice." Outside, Rivers dismounted at the livery stable, his movements fluid and economical. Several townspeople hurried to cross the street, giving him a wide berth. Word of yesterday's confrontation at the saloon had spread like wildfire. "Should we stop him?" Jimmy asked nervously, "before things get worse?" Cooper shook his head. "Might as well try to stop a tornado, son. Besides," he added, checking his revolver, "maybe it's time somebody stood up to the Carsons." The marshal stepped out onto the boardwalk, squinting in the morning light. Rivers was just emerging from the stable, having seen to his horse. "Mr. Rivers," Cooper called out, "got a minute?" Rivers turned, those winter-blue eyes assessing the marshal in an instant. After a moment, he nodded and crossed the street. "Quite a show you put on yesterday," Cooper said as Rivers approached. "Jake Carson's pride ain't the only thing you wounded. His reputation's taken a hit, too." "Man should know his limitations," Rivers replied quietly. "Carson boys ain't known for learning from their mistakes. They've got 40 hired guns at their ranch, and more friends scattered across 3 territories. Word is they're calling in favors, sending for some real hard cases." Rivers' expression didn't change. "Appreciate the warning, Marshal, but we both know they won't stop until someone stops them." Cooper sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. 2 years ago they killed my best deputy, shot him in the back, claimed it was self-defense, had witnesses lined up to swear to it. That's how they operate. Money, threats, and enough legitimate business to make them look respectable. And you let them. The accusation hung in the air between them. Cooper's jaw tightened. "Man's got to know his limitations. Like you said, I'm one marshal with 1 deputy. They've got an army." "Had a family once," Rivers said suddenly, his voice distant. "Wife, daughter. Some men rode in, wanted our land. When I wouldn't sell, they burned everything, left me for dead." He touched the scar on his face. "Sometimes one man's all it takes, Marshal, if he's willing to go far enough." Cooper studied Rivers for a long moment. "They say you took down the entire Thompson gang at Yellow Fork. 12 men, all killers." 13, Rivers corrected. "Most folks forget about the lookout." "Jesus," Cooper whispered. Then, lowering his voice, "Carson boys won't come at you straight. They'll try to wear you down, force you to watch your back until you make a mistake. Every gunman for 500 miles will be hunting you." A ghost of a smile crossed Rivers' scarred face. "Let them come. Been dead 15 years anyway." As Rivers turned to leave, Cooper called after him. "There's good people in this town, Rivers, people who don't deserve to get caught in the crossfire." Rivers paused. "Then you better make sure they stay inside when the shooting starts, Marshal. Because one way or another, Redemption Creek's about to live up to its name." Cooper watched him walk away, a chill running down his spine despite the morning heat. He'd tried to warn Rivers, but looking at those dead eyes, he realized something important. You can't warn a man who's already embraced his own destruction. The storm was coming to Redemption Creek, and God help anyone caught in its path. The Carson Ranch sprawled across 500 acres of prime Arizona territory, its whitewashed walls and manicured grounds a testament to ill-gotten wealth. In the main house's study, Marcus Carson watched his younger brother Jake pace like a caged mountain lion. 40 men, Jake spat, his wounded pride still festering. 40 guns, and we're sitting here, while that ghost makes fools of us." Bill Carson, the eldest, cleaned his revolver with methodical precision. Already sent riders to Tucson and Yuma, got telegrams out to every gunman who owes us favors. By week's end, we'll have enough firepower to take down an army. Marcus remained silent, studying the newspaper on his desk. The headline caught the morning light: Yellow Fork Massacre, 13 dead, no survivors. The article was yellowed with age, but its words still chilled the blood. "You're both missing the point," Marcus finally said. "Rivers isn't just another gunman. Look at his pattern. Thompson Gang, Cortez Brothers, Blackjack Murphy's outfit. He doesn't just kill men, he dismantles organizations." "We ain't them," Jake protested. "We've got legitimate businesses, political connections. Hell, we practically own the territorial judge." Marcus stood, his patience wearing thin. "You think that matters to him? Rivers is a ghost for a reason. No family, no friends, nothing to lose. Men like that, they're not afraid to die. They're already dead inside." "Then we'll oblige him," Bill growled. "Send him to hell proper." A knock interrupted them. Their foreman, Hank Mitchell, entered with a telegram. Marcus read it, his face darkening. "Sanchez and his boys won't come," he announced. "Says no amount of money's worth crossing rivers." 3 other replies just like it. Jake slammed his fist on the desk. "Cowards." "Smart men," Marcus corrected. "But we've still got options. Rivers has a reputation to maintain. He won't run, won't hide. That's his weakness." "What's the play?" Bill asked, holstering his cleaned gun. Marcus smiled coldly. "We draw him out. Make him face so many guns that even his legend can't save him. Every shooter, every thug, every badge we own, all at once." "The marshal won't like it," Jake warned. "Town could get shot up." "Marshal Cooper knows his place," Marcus replied. "And if some townsfolk catch stray bullets, well, that's the price of progress." Outside, the sun climbed higher over Redemption Creek. In town, Rivers sat calmly in the saloon, a coiled spring waiting to be released. At the ranch, the Carson brothers plotted his demise, their pride demanding blood. But pride has a way of blinding men to danger. Even as they planned, riders were already spurring their horses toward distant horizons, spreading word that the Carson Empire had made a fatal mistake. They'd awakened something that couldn't be bargained with, couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bought. The ghost was coming for them all. Dawn found Rivers at the widow Sarah Mitchell's ranch, fixing her broken fence line. The woman's husband had refused to sell to the Carsons 6 months ago. A week later, he died in what the sheriff called a tragic accident. Now the Carsons' men regularly damaged her property, trying to force her out. "You shouldn't be here, Mr. Rivers," Sarah said, bringing him water. Her face was worn but proud, her eyes carrying the weight of loss. "They'll come again, and I won't have more blood spilled on my land." Rivers drove another post into the hard earth. "Ma'am, blood's already been spilled. Question is whether we let them spill more." A cloud of dust on the horizon caught his attention. 3 riders, moving fast. Sarah tensed, but Rivers continued working, though his coat was arranged to give easy access to his guns. "Well, look what we found," the lead rider called out as they approached. "The ghost-playing ranch hand." Rivers recognized them, Carson gun hands, the type who enjoyed hurting those who couldn't fight back. The leader, a scarred man named Tucker, had a reputation for particular cruelty. "Mrs. Mitchell," Rivers said quietly, "might want to step inside." "This is my land," she replied firmly, standing her ground. Tucker spat tobacco juice in the dirt. "Not for long, widow. Accidents bound to happen sooner or later, unless you're counting on this ghost to protect you." He laughed. "Man can't be everywhere." Rivers drove the last post home with a solid thud. "You boys rode a long way just to talk." "Maybe we came to deliver a message," Tucker sneered. "Carson boys say you got one chance to ride out. Otherwise, town's gonna burn, and folks like the widow here gonna suffer." Rivers turned slowly, the morning sun casting his shadow long across the ground. "Got a message for the Carsons myself. Touch this ranch again, touch any innocent in this town, and there won't be enough left of you to bury." Tucker's hand drifted toward his gun. "Big words for one man. Ain't heard about Yellow Fork Tucker or Blackjack Murphy's gang?" Sarah's voice carried unexpected steel. "One man's all it takes if he's the right man." A tense silence followed. Tucker's companions shifted uneasily in their saddles. They'd heard the stories, everyone had. "Way I see it," Rivers continued calmly, "you boys got two choices. Ride back, tell your bosses to leave honest folks alone, or draw those guns you're itching to touch, see if the stories about me are true." For a moment, Tucker's face twisted with rage and indecision. Then Rivers took one step forward, and something in those cold blue eyes made the decision for them. "This ain't over," Tucker snarled, wheeling his horse around. "No," Rivers agreed quietly, "but it will be soon." They rode off in a cloud of dust. Sarah released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "They'll be back," she said, "with more men." "Yes," Rivers replied, returning to his work, "but next time they won't find me here." "You're going after them, aren't you? The Carsons, all of them?" Rivers paused, looking at the horizon where the riders had disappeared. "Man who killed your husband, Tucker's brother Pete, he's at the Silver Dollar every Thursday night. Man who set the fire at the Thompson place last month, he bunks in the North Line shack. Carson's bookkeeper, the one who forges the land deeds, lives above the mercantile." Sarah stared at him. "You've been watching, all this time, fixing fences, helping folks." "Man wants to tear something down," Rivers said, his voice distant. "Best know how it's built first." By sunset, the fence was mended. Rivers refused payment, asking only for a meal and news of Carson movements in the area. As he rode back to town, Sarah Mitchell watched him go, understanding finally that she'd witnessed something few ever saw. The calm before a storm that would change everything. The ghost had been gathering his knowledge, marking his targets. Now the killing would begin. Thursday night found the Silver Dollar Saloon crowded with Carson men, Pete Tucker among them. The killer sat at his usual table, drinking and bragging about the accidents he'd arranged for the gang. None noticed the silent figure in the shadows, watching with predator's patience. Rivers waited until Tucker was deep in his cups before making his move. He'd studied his target's habits for weeks. 3 drinks made him careless. 5 made him mean. Tonight would be his last. "Pete Tucker!" Rivers called out, his voice cutting through the saloon's noise. "Time to answer for James Mitchell." Tucker froze, whiskey glass halfway to his lips. The room fell silent as death. "You remember him, don't you?" Rivers continued, stepping into the lamplight. "Honest rancher, broke his neck in a fall from his horse, after he refused to sell to the Carsons." "Rivers," Tucker growled, shoving back from his table, "you're dead." 4 other Carson men reached for their guns. Rivers didn't blink. "Draw," he said simply. What followed was a demonstration of why the ghost was legend. Tucker's gun had barely cleared leather when Rivers' first shot took him in the heart. The second Carson man managed to fire once, wild, before a bullet caught him between the eyes. The third and fourth died together, Rivers' gun seeming to be everywhere at once. The last man threw his weapon away. "Don't shoot. I ain't even drawn." "Smart choice," Rivers said. "Tell Marcus Carson, this is just the beginning." By the time Marshal Cooper arrived, Rivers was gone. 5 bodies lay cooling on the saloon floor, their guns barely cleared from their holsters. "Jesus," Cooper whispered, surveying the scene. "Never seen shooting like that." The surviving witness, still shaking, looked up from his drink. "Wasn't shooting, Marshal. Wasn't execution. He knew exactly who he wanted. Rest of us he didn't even look at." Word spread fast. At the Carson ranch, Marcus paced his study while his brothers raged. 5 men, Jake shouted. 5 of our best, gone in seconds. "He's picking us apart," Marcus said grimly. "Testing our defenses, eliminating key men. Tucker was our best triggerman. Johnson handled the protection racket in town. Williams ran the cattle operations. Then we hit back, Bill snarled. Full force, every gun we've got. Marcus shook his head. That's what he wants. Draw us out, make us react. No, we need to change the game, put him on the defensive. At his line shack, Rivers cleaned his guns with methodical precision. The first strike had gone perfectly, 5 threats eliminated, and a message sent. The Carsons would be desperate now, more likely to make mistakes. A sound outside caught his attention. Riders approaching, at least a dozen. The Carsons had responded faster than expected. Rivers smiled grimly in the darkness. Let them come. Tonight was just the beginning. By the time he was done, the Carson Empire would be ashes, and Redemption Creek would know peace again. The riders drew closer. Rivers checked his guns one final time, then melted into the shadows. The night was about to get interesting. Tommy Wilson was 15 when he first approached Rivers, carrying his father's old Colt with trembling hands. He found the gunslinger at dawn, practicing behind the livery stable. Rivers's speed was impossible. 6 shots, 6 tin cans flying faster than Tommy's eyes could follow. "Teach me," Tommy said, his young voice cracking with determination. Rivers continued reloading, not looking up. "Your father know you're here?" "Pa's dead. Carson men killed him last year. Said it was a robbery gone wrong, but everyone knows better." Tommy's knuckles whitened around the gun's grip. "I need to learn." Now Rivers looked up, studying the boy with those winter blue eyes. He saw something familiar there, the same cold flame that had driven him after losing his own family. "Revenge won't bring him back," Rivers said quietly. "Ain't about revenge, it's about not being helpless anymore. About standing up when others won't." Rivers was silent for a long moment, remembering another young boy who'd once dreamed of being faster than death. "Show me your stance." Tommy raised the gun awkwardly. Rivers shook his head. "First lesson, gun's not a snake. Grip it like you mean it, but don't strangle it. Balance is everything." For the next hour, Rivers drilled the basics into him. Stance, grip, sight alignment. No shooting, just fundamentals. Tommy's arms ached, but he didn't complain. "Why'd you really come to Redemption Creek?" Tommy asked during a break. "Wasn't just chance, was it?" "No," Rivers admitted. "Carson Empire's built on blood and fear. Been tracking them for months. They're connected to some old business of mine." "The men who killed your family?" Rivers' eyes sharpened. "Town talks too much." "Town's hoping you'll do what no one else dares," Tommy replied. "Even Marshal Cooper's afraid of them. Fear's natural. Using it to hurt innocent people isn't." Rivers stood. "Enough talk. Show me that stance again." As the sun climbed higher, Rivers saw something in Tommy that reminded him of himself. Not just the hunger for justice, but the patience to learn properly. The boy wasn't naturally gifted, but he had something better. Determination. "Tomorrow, same time," Rivers said finally. "If you're serious about this, we do it right. No shortcuts." Tommy nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "They say you're a ghost, Mr. Rivers, that you can't be killed." "Everyone can be killed, boy. Trick is making your enemies realize that truth before you do." As Tommy walked away, Rivers watched him go with troubled eyes. He'd sworn never to take a student, never to pass on the skills that had made him the West's deadliest gunman. But sometimes fate had other plans. The boy had the same look he'd had 15 years ago, the look of someone who'd seen too much darkness and decided to fight back. Maybe, Rivers thought, teaching Tommy would help balance some of the blood on his own hands, or maybe he was just creating another ghost. While teaching Tommy tested Rivers' patience, it also forced him to confront his own demons. Each morning's lesson stirred memories he'd rather forget, wounds that had never truly healed. "Speed ain't everything," he told Tommy one dawn, watching the boy practice his draw. "Man who shoots first often dies first. It's about reading your opponent, knowing their intent before they do." "Like you did at Yellow Fork?" Tommy asked between breaths. Rivers' hand unconsciously touched the scar on his face. Yellow Fork was different. That was... He trailed off, remembering. The Thompson gang had been celebrating in the saloon when he walked in. 13 men who'd helped destroy his life, laughing, drinking, unaware that death had come calling. "They say you killed them all in less than a minute," Tommy pressed. "Killing's easy," Rivers replied sharply. "Living with it after, that's the hard part." Tommy lowered his gun, studying his mentor. "The nightmares still come, don't they? I hear you sometimes at night in your room at the boarding house, calling out names." Rivers stiffened. "We're done for today." "Sarah and Emily, those were their names, weren't they? Your wife and daughter?" The question hit Rivers like a physical blow. For a moment his carefully maintained control cracked, revealing the broken man beneath the legend. "Never speak their names again," he whispered, his voice deadly quiet. "Never." But Tommy, with a boy's cruel innocence, pressed on. "Is that why you're helping me? Because you couldn't help them?" Rivers moved faster than thought, his gun appearing in his hand. Tommy flinched, but Rivers was already turning, firing 6 shots in rapid succession. 6 bottles on the distant fence exploded. "This is what I am now," Rivers said, his voice hollow. "A killer, a ghost. Don't try to make it something noble." "My pa used to say every man has a choice," Tommy replied softly. "Even ghosts." Rivers holstered his gun with mechanical precision. "Your pa was wrong. Some choices get burned away, leaving nothing but ashes and blood." He could still smell the smoke from that night, still hear Emily's screams. The Blackwood gang hadn't just killed his family, they'd killed the man he used to be, leaving this cold-eyed specter in his place. "The Carsons," Tommy said suddenly. "They're connected to them, aren't they? The ones who killed your family?" Rivers was silent for a long moment. "Go home, Tommy. Some things you're better off not knowing." But as the boy walked away, Rivers found himself haunted by his words. Every man has a choice, even ghosts. He pulled out the worn photograph of Sarah and Emily, their smiles frozen in time. "I'm sorry," he whispered to their images. "The man you loved died with you. This is all that's left." That night, the nightmares came again. Sarah's voice, Emily's laugh, fire and screams and blood. Rivers woke in darkness, his gun in his hand, unsure for a moment what was real and what was memory. In the distance, he heard Carson riders moving through town. They were getting bolder, more desperate. Soon they would make their move, and Rivers would add more ghosts to those that already haunted him. But Tommy's words echoed in his mind. Every man has a choice, even ghosts. Perhaps the boy understood more than Rivers had given him credit for. Perhaps there was still a choice to be made, even after all these years. But first, there was justice to be served, and that at least was something John Rivers knew how to deliver. Marshal David Cooper sat at his desk, staring at the badge that had defined his life for 20 years. Before him lay 2 telegrams, one from the territorial governor demanding he arrest Rivers, the other from Marcus Carson offering a small fortune to look the other way during their planned ambush. "They're gathering guns," Deputy Jimmy reported, entering the office. "Carson men everywhere. Town's like a powder keg." Cooper didn't respond, his weathered fingers tracing the star on his chest. He thought of his dead deputy, of all the times he'd compromised, told himself one man couldn't stand against an empire. A shadow darkened his doorway. Rivers. "Come to make my job harder?" Cooper asked without looking up. "Come to give you a choice," Rivers replied, stepping inside. "One you should have made long ago." Jimmy's hand drifted toward his gun, but Cooper waved him down. "Choice about what?" "About what kind of man you want to be." Rivers placed a stack of papers on Cooper's desk. "Evidence. Land deeds forged by Carson's bookkeeper. Witness statements about murders made to look like accidents. Bank records showing bribes to judges and officials." Cooper leafed through the documents, his face hardening. "Where did you get these?" "Been watching, gathering. building a case while they thought I was just a ghost with a gun." Rivers' voice carried quiet intensity. "Question is, what are you going to do with it?" "Do?" Cooper laughed bitterly. "What can one marshal do against their whole operation? Same thing one gunfighter's been doing. Stand up, fight back. Remember what that badge really means." Cooper stood, pacing to his window. Carson riders filled the streets, tension thick in the air. "They'll burn the town down." "Town's already burning," Rivers countered. "Has been since you first looked the other way. Only difference is now you've got a chance to put the fire out." "By helping you?" "By doing your job, arresting murderers, protecting the innocent, being the law, not just wearing it." Cooper turned, studying Rivers with new eyes. "You planned this from the start, didn't you? Gathering evidence while playing vigilante, making them focus on the ghost story while building a legal noose." Rivers didn't answer directly. "Some things need a badge to make right. Other things need a gun. Time to decide which you're going to be, the law or just another man the Carsons own." Cooper picked up the territorial governor's telegram, then the one from Marcus Carson. 20 years of compromise stared back at him. 20 years of telling himself he was powerless. "Jimmy," he said finally, "ride for the territorial capital. Take these documents to Judge Hanson, not Wilson. He's in Carson's pocket. Tell Hanson I'm officially requesting federal marshals and a grand jury." "Sir?" Jimmy's eyes widened. Time to be a real lawman again. Cooper strapped on his gun belt. "Rivers is right. Some things need a badge. Some need a gun. Maybe this needs both." Rivers nodded slightly, the ghost of approval in his cold eyes. "They'll come for you now, once they realize you've turned." "Let them come." Cooper's voice carried steel it hadn't known in years. "I remember how to shoot straight." As Rivers turned to leave, Cooper called after him. "Was this your plan all along? Push me into choosing sides?" "Man always has a choice, Marshal," Rivers replied, using Tommy's words. "Even a lawman, even a ghost." Cooper watched him go, feeling the weight of his badge, really feeling it, for the first time in years. Outside, Carson men moved through the streets like wolves circling prey. But something had changed in Redemption Creek. The law had remembered its purpose, and a ghost had helped remind it of its duty. The storm was coming, but this time the law would face it standing tall. Marcus Carson's plan unfolded like a snake preparing to strike. His men spread through town, not in obvious groups, but in ones and twos, taking positions in strategic locations. Meanwhile, hired guns arrived daily, drawn by the promise of wealth and the chance to claim the ghost's reputation. "Rivers!" the shout echoed down Main Street. "Face me!" Rivers looked up from his coffee at the Grand Hotel's restaurant. Through the window he saw a young gunslinger standing in the street, barely old enough to shave. "Third one this morning," the waitress said nervously. "Carson's offering $5,000 to anyone who brings them your head." Rivers continued eating. Boy's about to earn his first lesson in the difference between reputation and reality. Outside, the young gun grew bolder. "Yellow fork was luck. You're nothing but a—" The rest of his sentence was cut short as Rivers' bullet took him in the shoulder. No one had even seen him draw. "Lesson 1, Rivers said quietly, holstering his gun. "Man who talks about killing usually dies before the man who just does it." But the shooting served its purpose. Carson men used the distraction to move closer, establishing firing positions around the hotel. Rivers saw it all, noting each man's location with professional detachment. Tommy found him an hour later at the livery stable. "Mr. Rivers, Carson's men are setting up a kill box," Rivers finished. "Been watching them all morning. Pushing me toward the center of town, trying to limit my movement." "Shouldn't we do something?" "Already doing it." Rivers checked his guns methodically. Sometimes best way to spring a trap is to let it be sprung. In his office, Marshal Cooper watched the pieces moving into place. "They're getting ready to hit him with everything." Not just him, Jimmy added. Seen at least 30 new faces in town. Professional gunmen, all of them. They're planning something big. Cooper nodded grimly. Question is, what's Rivers planning in return? The answer came sooner than expected. As sunset approached, fires broke out simultaneously at 3 Carson-owned businesses. While their men rushed to protect their property, Rivers moved like a ghost through town, marking targets, studying angles. At the Carson ranch, Marcus received the reports with growing unease. He's using our own strategy against us, making us divide our forces. Then we take him tonight, Bill insisted. Full assault, every gun we've got. Marcus shook his head. That's what he wants. Turn the town into a war zone, force Cooper to choose sides publicly. He paused, a cold smile forming. No, we need to change the game. Make him fight on our terms. How? By giving him something he can't ignore. Something personal. Marcus turned to his remaining men. Find the boy, the one he's been teaching. As night fell over Redemption Creek, the pieces were in place. Carson's men had their positions. Hired guns waited in the shadows, and Rivers moved through the darkness like the ghost they named him. But someone else moved in that darkness too, heading for Tommy Wilson's house with orders to make Rivers' student part of the game. The setup was complete. Now, the real killing would begin. The rider arrived at midnight, his horse lathered from hard riding. He dismounted outside the marshal's office, moving with the easy grace of a man accustomed to violence. Marshal Cooper's hand tightened on his gun until the lamplight revealed a familiar face. Been a long time, Ghost, the man said, stepping into the light. His face was weathered leather, crossed with scars, and his eyes held the same haunted look as Rivers. Hawkins, Rivers replied from the shadows. Thought you were dead. Almost was. Blackwood's finally caught up to me in Mexico. Hawkins touched a fresh scar on his neck. Brought news you need to hear. Inside Cooper's office, Hawkins laid out the truth. Carson Empire's just a branch. Whole operations run by the Blackwood family. They're moving west, taking territory, setting up legitimate businesses as fronts. Rivers' face remained impassive, but his eyes burned. James Blackwood still running things? Yeah, and he remembers you, Ghost. Carson boys sent word about their trouble here. Blackwood's coming personally, bringing every gun he can hire. Cooper cursed softly. How many? 50, maybe more. Professional killers, all of them, plus Carson's local muscle. Hawkins turned to Rivers. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Draw them out. Make them show themselves. Been hunting them 15 years, Rivers replied quietly. Following their operation from Texas to California, Carson connection was the key I needed. You're insane, Cooper interjected. Even you can't take on that many. Already sent for help, Hawkins said. Others who lost family to the Blackwoods, men who owe the Ghost their lives. They'll come. Rivers shook his head. This isn't their fight. Hell it ain't, Hawkins' voice hardened. Remember Carson City? You saved my wife and daughters when the Blackwoods came. Remember Sacramento, when you got Josh Morgan's family out? We all owe you. Owing a debt ain't the same as having a death wish, Rivers argued. Maybe not, but some debts need paying, and some fights need fighting. Hawkins checked his guns with practiced ease. Besides, somebody's got to watch your back while you're playing Ghost. A sound outside interrupted them. Tommy burst in, out of breath. Carson men! They're burning the Widow Mitchell's ranch. Rivers moved for the door, but Hawkins blocked his path. It's a diversion. They're trying to split us up. Doesn't matter. Can't let innocent people suffer. Hawkins sighed, then checked his guns again. Some things never change. Still charging into trouble to help strangers. He turned to Cooper. Marshal, reckon you better deputize me. Might need official sanction for what's coming. Cooper handed him a badge. Welcome to Redemption Creek's last stand. As they rode into the night, Hawkins studied his old friend. The Ghost had changed since Carson City, harder, colder, more machine than man. But somewhere inside, the same sense of justice burned. The Blackwoods were coming, but this time the ghost wouldn't face them alone. The Carson men hit Redemption Creek at dawn, sealing off every road and trail. Riders positioned themselves on the ridges overlooking town, while sharpshooters took up positions in the abandoned mill and church steeple. By sunrise, the town was completely surrounded. Counting 47 gunmen, Hawkins reported from his vantage point in the hotel. Professional outfits, too, recognized some from the border wars. Rivers studied the deployment through his spyglass. They're waiting for something. Or someone, Marshal Cooper added grimly. Blackwood's advance riders were spotted 20 miles out. The siege began with subtle pressure. Carson men turned back supply wagons, cut telegraph lines, and stopped anyone trying to enter or leave town. Inside Redemption Creek, tension mounted as food and ammunition stores dwindled. "They're trying to starve us out," Sarah Mitchell observed, delivering bread to the marshal's office. "Make the townspeople desperate enough to turn on you." Rivers watched a group of Carson men intimidate a local merchant. Won't work. They don't have the patience for a long siege. He was right. By noon, Marcus Carson's ultimatum arrived. Surrender Rivers, or the town burns. "Got 2 hours to decide," the messenger announced to the gathered townspeople. "After that, we start shooting." The town council met in emergency session, fear evident on every face. Mayor Phillips, a Carson puppet, pushed for immediate surrender. Others argued for compliance, citing the overwhelming odds. Then Tommy's mother stood up. "My husband died because we all looked the other way, because we were afraid. I say no more." Her words sparked something. Other voices joined in, people who'd lost family to Carson, accidents, merchants tired of paying protection money, ranchers who'd been forced off their land. "Town's finally found its spine," Hawkins commented, watching from the window. Rivers cleaned his guns methodically. "Town's about to find out what that courage costs." The 2-hour deadline approached. Marshal Cooper positioned his deputies and the few townsmen who could shoot. Hawkins organized the defense of key buildings. Rivers waited, watching the Carson men with predators' patience. The first shot came from the church steeple, a Carson sharpshooter targeting the marshal's office. The bullet shattered glass but found no targets. Return fire from Hawkins drove the shooter to cover. Then all hell broke loose. Carson men charged from multiple directions, using wagons as moving cover. Defenders fired from windows and rooftops, turning the streets into killing grounds. Rivers moved like a ghost through the chaos, his guns speaking with deadly precision. "South barrier's broken," someone shouted. "They're coming through." Rivers appeared as if summoned, his bullets dropping 3 Carson men before they could breach the barricade. 2 more fell to Hawkins's rifle from above, but the attackers kept coming. For every one that fell, 2 more seemed to take their place. The town's defenders, though fighting bravely, began to falter under the assault. "Can't hold them much longer," Cooper called out, reloading his shotgun. "Too many angles of attack." Rivers surveyed the battlefield, noting patterns in the assault. "They're not trying to take the town," he realized suddenly. "This is another diversion." As if confirming his words, a new sound cut through the gunfire, horses approaching fast from the north. A lot of horses. "Blackwood," Rivers breathed, his face hardening. "Right on schedule." The siege of Redemption Creek was about to enter its bloodiest phase. The sound of gunfire echoed through Redemption Creek streets as the town reached its breaking point. Not everyone had the stomach for prolonged violence. Mayor Phillips led a group of citizens waving white flags toward the Carson lines. "We can't just shoot our way out of this," Phillips shouted at Cooper. "Rivers needs to surrender before more innocent people die." "Only innocent people dying are the ones the Carsons kill," Sarah Mitchell countered, passing ammunition to the defenders. "You want to kneel to murderers? Go ahead. Rest of us are done kneeling." The division split families, turned neighbor against neighbor. Some barricaded themselves in the church, praying for deliverance. Others prepared for a final stand. Rivers watched it all from the shadows, his cold eyes noting every betrayal, every act of courage. When Tommy brought news that some townspeople were secretly signaling Carson positions to the attackers, his face showed no surprise. "Fear makes people choose survival over right," he told the boy. "Remember that." "What about hope?" Tommy asked. "What does that make people choose?" Before Rivers could answer, Hawkins burst in. "Ghost! Carson men are pulling back from the south end, regrouping with fresh riders coming in." "Blackwood's advance guard," Rivers confirmed. "Time to move." But Mayor Phillips had other plans. He'd gathered 30 citizens at the town hall, all demanding Rivers' surrender. "We're taking a vote," Phillips announced, "whether to give him up or not." Marshal Cooper faced the crowd, his badge gleaming. "This isn't about one man anymore. It's about whether we let killers rule through fear." "Easy for you to say," someone shouted. "Your family's already safe out of town." The argument was interrupted by fresh gunfire. Carson men had set fire to the livery stable, sending horses panicking through the streets. In the chaos, several townspeople made a break for Carson lines. "Town's coming apart," Hawkins observed grimly. Rivers checked his ammunition. "Town's showing its true colors. Some will break, some will stand. Time to let them choose." He stepped into the street, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Anyone wants to leave? Leave now. No one will stop you. But understand what you're choosing. Today decides whether you live free or under Carson law." "We'll all die," Phillips cried. "Maybe," Sarah Mitchell stepped forward, rifle in hand, "but at least we'll die standing up." Her words sparked something. Other townspeople moved to join her. The blacksmith, the school teacher, ranchers who'd lost land to Carson threats. Ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. Tommy took position beside them, his father's gun steady in his hands. "Some things are worth dying for, Mr. Phillips." The mayor stared at them, then at Rivers. "You've doomed us all." "No," Rivers replied quietly. "I just showed you who you really are." As Phillips and his followers fled toward Carson lines, the remaining defenders reinforced their positions. They were fewer now, but somehow stronger. Fear had separated the wheat from the chaff. In the distance, dust clouds marked Blackwood's approach. The real battle was about to begin. Tommy spotted the Carson scouts first, 3 riders trying to slip through the northern alley, mapping the defenders' positions. His hand didn't shake as he raised his father's gun, remembering Rivers' lessons. "Breathe," he whispered to himself. "Read their movement. Time the shot." The lead rider never saw it coming. Tommy's bullet took him clean from the saddle. The second scout wheeled his horse, drawing iron. But Tommy was already moving to a new position, just as Rivers had taught him. "Good shot." Rivers materialized beside him like a shadow. "Better movement." "Learn from the best." Tommy ejected his spent shell. 2 more heading east. Rivers nodded. "You take them. Need to see what you've learned." The remaining scouts had split up, trying to flank the town's eastern defenses. Tommy moved through back alleys and shadow, tracking them with predator's patience. His heart hammered, but his hands stayed steady. The first scout died checking the doctor's house, never knowing what hit him. The second proved trickier, more experienced. He spotted Tommy's movement and opened fire, forcing the boy into cover. "Control your breathing," Rivers' voice echoed in his memory. "Fear's natural. Use it. Let it sharpen you." Tommy counted the scout's shots. 6 rounds, then silence. Revolver empty. He spun from cover, his own gun roaring. The scout fell, clutching his chest, shock on his face at being outmaneuvered by a boy. "Well done." Rivers appeared, checking the bodies. "Clean kills. Professional work." "Doesn't feel professional," Tommy admitted. "Feels terrible?" Rivers nodded. "Good. Day it stops feeling terrible is the day you become something worse than them." Hawkins joined them, rifle smoking. "Boy's a natural. Counted 5 confirmed kills today." "Not a boy anymore," Rivers corrected quietly. "War does that. Makes men out of children." Tommy reloaded, his movements mechanical, precise. Like it did to you, after your family? Different time, different war. Rivers checked his own guns. But same choice? Stand and fight, or live on your knees? Gunfire erupted from the south. Carson men testing the defenses again. Tommy moved without being told, taking up his position on the hotel roof. His shots rang out with deadly accuracy, proving Rivers' teaching. "You've created quite a shooter," Hawkins observed. Rivers watched his student work. "Created something more dangerous, a man who'll stand his ground. Carson Empire won't survive such men." Tommy's rifle cracked again. Another Carson rider fell. The apprentice had become a warrior, forged in Redemption Creek's crucible of violence. But unlike Rivers, he hadn't lost his humanity in the process. Maybe that was the real test, not just learning to kill, but remembering why it matters. Tommy had passed both. James Blackwood's arrival changed everything. His advance riders thundered into Redemption Creek like a storm, 60 hardened killers who'd left a trail of blood from Texas to California. But something was different this time. Instead of finding a town cowering in fear, they met organized resistance. "Northwest barricades holding," Hawkins reported, blood trickling from a graze on his forehead. "Lost 2 men, but Carson's boys paid triple for every foot." Rivers watched the battle unfold from his vantage point atop the hotel. Blackwood's men were professionals, coordinating their attacks with military precision. But the town's defenders had something stronger than skill, desperation born of knowing there was no retreat. "They're probing," Rivers observed, "testing our strength before Blackwood commits his main force." A rider appeared on the ridge overlooking town, his black coat catching the morning sun. Even at this distance, Rivers recognized him. James Blackwood hadn't changed much in 15 years. Still sat a horse like he owned the world, still carried himself with the arrogant confidence of a man who bought and sold lives like cattle. "That's him, isn't it?" Tommy asked, his rifle trained on the distant figure. "The one who killed your family?" "Out of range," Rivers replied quietly. "He knows it too. Man's careful, never gets his own hands dirty if he can help it." Blackwood raised his hand, and fresh waves of attackers surged forward. But something had shifted in Redemption Creek. The townspeople fought with newfound determination, turning every street into a killing ground. Sarah Mitchell's shotgun spoke from her boarding house window, dropping 2 raiders. The blacksmith's anvil rang as he turned horseshoes into makeshift grape shot for defenders' weapons. Even Marshal Cooper seemed transformed, his badge shining as he directed the defense. When Carson men tried to flank through the livery stable, they found themselves caught in a deadly crossfire. "Town's got teeth now," Hawkins grinned, reloading his rifle. Blackwood wasn't expecting that. Rivers nodded slightly. "Man's used to people breaking, doesn't understand what happens when they decide to stand." The morning wore on, and slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Blackwood's professional killers found themselves facing opponents who knew every alley, every rooftop, every line of sight. Carson men, seeing their invincible reputation crumbling, began to waver. "Pull back!" The order echoed across the battlefield. "Regroup at the ridge!" Rivers watched them retreat, his cold eyes calculating. "They'll hit us again at sunset, full force this time." But something had changed in Redemption Creek. The town had found its courage, discovered what it meant to fight back. As defenders reloaded and tended their wounded, there was a new light in their eyes. They were no longer afraid of ghosts. They'd become them. Marcus Carson paced his study at the ranch, watching Blackwood's men transform his empire into a war camp. The elegantly furnished room felt smaller with James Blackwood's presence filling it, the older man's cold eyes following Marcus's movements. 15 years I've built this territory," Marcus said, "and your ghost threatens to tear it all down in a week." Blackwood smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. The ghost is a symptom, Marcus. The disease is weakness. He moved to the window, watching riders prepare for the final assault. You let these people think they had choices. That's your mistake. These are my lands, Marcus bristled. My operation. Your father understood his place in our organization, Blackwood replied smoothly. Knew the value of true loyalty. Question is, do you? The threat hung in the air between them. Marcus remembered his father's warnings about the Blackwoods, how they'd built their empire on broken promises and shallow graves. In town, Rivers sensed the changing dynamics. Blackwood's taking control, he told Hawkins, as they watched Carson riders being positioned by Blackwood's lieutenants. Carson Empire was always just a facade. Makes sense, Hawkins nodded. Blackwoods need legitimate businesses to hide their operation. Carson family provides the respectable face. And muscle when needed, Rivers added, until they outlive their usefulness. Marshal Cooper joined them, his badge catching the afternoon sun. Carson men are splitting into smaller groups, some looking mighty unhappy about taking orders from Blackwood's boys. Rivers studied the movements through his spyglass. The tensions were visible. Carson men used to being kings in their territory, now reduced to pawns in Blackwood's game. Enemy of my enemy, Hawkins mused. Maybe, Rivers replied. Question is whether Marcus Carson's pride is stronger than his fear of Blackwood. The answer came sooner than expected. As sunset approached, a rider approached under a white flag, one of Marcus Carson's trusted men. Mr. Carson requests a meeting, the rider announced. Just him and Rivers, neutral ground. Rivers considered the offer, reading the desperation behind it. Tell him midnight, the old Mitchell place. As the rider departed, Hawkins grabbed Rivers' arm. It's a trap. Course it is, Rivers nodded. Question is, whose trap? Carson's or Blackwood's? The sun set over Redemption Creek, painting the sky blood red. The final pieces were moving into position, but the game had changed. The true enemy had shown himself, and with him came chances for unlikely alliances. Sometimes, Rivers reflected, the devil you know is better than the one you've been hunting for 15 years, especially when both devils fear the ghost between them. The old Mitchell place stood dark against the midnight sky, its burned-out shell a testament to Carson violence. Rivers arrived alone, his horse's hooves silent on the scorched earth. Marcus Carson waited on the porch, his usual arrogance replaced by something closer to fear. Blackwood's taking everything, Marcus said without preamble. My family built this territory, now he treats us like hired guns. Always was his territory, Rivers replied. You just held it for him. He killed my father, Marcus's voice cracked. 3 years ago, made it look like heart failure. I found the proof last night, going through his old papers. Rivers watched him carefully, reading the truth in his eyes. Now you know how it feels, losing family to men like him. I want him dead. Marcus stepped closer. My men will stand down, turn on Blackwood's crew when you give the word, but I want to be there when he falls. Why should I trust you? Because I finally understand what my father never did. There's no dealing with devils. Marcus extended his hand. Help me kill Blackwood. The Carson Empire is finished. You have my word. Rivers studied the offered hand. 15 years of hatred warred with cold logic. Your word meant nothing yesterday. Why should it matter today? Because yesterday I was a king. Today I'm just another man Blackwood plans to bury. Marcus smiled bitterly. Enemy of my enemy, ghost. Sometimes that's enough. A shot cracked through the night. Marcus staggered, blood blooming on his chest. Rivers spun, guns appearing in his hands, but the shooter was already gone. Blackwood, Marcus gasped, clutching his wound. He knew I'd turn. His eyes found Rivers. Kill him! Kill them all! As Marcus Carson bled out on his family's land, Rivers made his choice. Sometimes revenge needs unlikely allies. Sometimes the past has to die before justice can live. He rode back to town carrying Marcus Carson's badge, the symbol of authority Blackwood had tried to steal. By sunrise, everyone would know. The Carson Empire had chosen sides in the Ghosts' War. The old Mitchell place stood dark against the midnight sky, its burned-out shell a testament to Carson violence. Rivers arrived alone, his horse's hooves silent on the scorched earth. Marcus Carson waited on the porch, his usual arrogance replaced by something closer to fear. "Blackwood's taking everything," Marcus said without preamble. "My family built this territory. Now he treats us like hired guns." "Always was his territory," Rivers replied. "You just held it for him." "He killed my father," Marcus's voice cracked. 3 years ago, made it look like heart failure. I found the proof last night, going through his old papers." Rivers watched him carefully, reading the truth in his eyes. "Now you know how it feels, losing family to men like him." "I want him dead." Marcus stepped closer. "My men will stand down, turn on Blackwood's crew when you give the word, but I want to be there when he falls." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I finally understand what my father never did. There's no dealing with devils." Marcus extended his hand. "Help me kill Blackwood. The Carson Empire is finished. You have my word." Rivers studied the offered hand. 15 years of hatred warred with cold logic. "Your word meant nothing yesterday. Why should it matter today?" "Because yesterday I was a king. Today I'm just another man Blackwood plans to bury." Marcus smiled bitterly. "Enemy of my enemy, Ghost. Sometimes that's enough." A shot cracked through the night. Marcus staggered, blood blooming on his chest. Rivers spun, guns appearing in his hands, but the shooter was already gone. "Blackwood!" Marcus gasped, clutching his wound. He knew I'd turn. His eyes found Rivers. "Kill him. Kill them all." As Marcus Carson bled out on his family's land, Rivers made his choice. Sometimes revenge needs unlikely allies. Sometimes the past has to die before justice can live. He rode back to town carrying Marcus Carson's badge, the symbol of authority Blackwood had tried to steal. By sunrise, everyone would know. The Carson Empire had chosen sides in the Ghosts' War. The storm broke over Redemption Creek with the first light of dawn. Blackwood's men struck hard, trying to overwhelm the town's defenses before their ammunition ran low. But they found themselves caught in a trap of their own making. Carson men who knew every street and alley now turned that knowledge against them. "They're pushing through the south barricade," Tommy's voice carried over the gunfire. His rifle cracked 3 times, each shot finding its mark. The boy had become a man in the crucible of battle, his aim as true as his mentor's. Rivers moved like his namesake through the chaos, a ghost dealing death with mechanical precision. Each shot, each movement served a purpose, herding Blackwood's killers into prepared killing grounds. "East side's clear," Hawkins reported, blood streaming from a fresh wound. "Bill Carson's boys are pushing them toward the center." Marshal Cooper coordinated the defense from the hotel, his badge catching the morning sun. "They're running out of options. Blackwood will have to show himself soon." The battle shifted as the morning wore on. Blackwood's professional killers found themselves facing opponents who had nothing left to lose. Sarah Mitchell's boarding house became a fortress, her shotgun commanding the main street. The blacksmith shop turned into a last stand for 3 of Blackwood's men, until Bill Carson himself led the charge to clear it. Then came the moment Rivers had waited 15 years for. James Blackwood appeared on the ridge, watching his empire crumble. His cold eyes met Rivers across the battlefield, recognition and hatred flaring between them. "Just like Yellow Fork!" Blackwood shouted, his voice carrying over the gunfire. "Come face me yourself, Ghost, or are you still hiding behind others?" Rivers stepped into the street, guns ready. "No more hiding, James. No more innocent people dying for your greed." The street cleared as if by magic, gunmen on both sides recognizing the moment for what it was. 15 years of vengeance had led to this, Two legends facing each other in the dust of Redemption Creek. "I should have made sure you were dead that night," Blackwood said, his hand hovering near his gun. "You made me what I am," Rivers replied. "Time to face your ghost." The world held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The duel happened faster than thought. Blackwood was fast. Reputation hadn't lied about that. But Rivers was faster, his gun clearing leather before Blackwood's fingers could close on his grip. Two shots rang out. The first took Blackwood's gun, shattering it in his hand. The second struck his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "That's for Sarah," Rivers said quietly, advancing on his fallen enemy. "My wife." Blackwood laughed, blood staining his expensive coat. "Still the same fool, John, thinking justice matters in a world of wolves." Rivers' next shot took Blackwood's knee. "That's for Emily, my daughter." "Kill me then," Blackwood spat. "Finish what you started at Yellow Fork." "No." Rivers holstered one gun, keeping the other trained on Blackwood. "Death's too easy. You're going to stand trial, face every person you've wronged. Watch your empire crumble legally, piece by piece." Marshal Cooper stepped forward, badges in both hands, his own and Marcus Carson's. "James Blackwood, you're under arrest for murder, extortion, and conspiracy across 3 territories." Blackwood's remaining men, seeing their leader fallen, began surrendering. Bill Carson's riders rounded them up while Hawkins secured Blackwood. "Town's yours now," Rivers told Cooper. "Time someone ran it right." Tommy approached, his father's gun still smoking. "What about the rest of Blackwood's organization?" "Man kept records," Rivers replied. "Enough to take down operations from Texas to California. Law can handle it from here." Sarah Mitchell emerged from her boarding house, shotgun still ready. "Is it really over?" Rivers looked at the town, battered, bloodied, but unbroken. "Redemption Creek's earned its name today. Rest is up to you." The sun climbed higher, painting the streets gold. A new day was dawning, bought with blood, but promising something better. Justice had finally come to Redemption Creek. The aftermath of battle revealed its cost in stark relief. 12 townspeople dead, twice as many wounded. The doctor's office overflowed with the injured, while graves were dug in the hard Arizona earth. Each shovelful seemed to echo with the price of freedom. Rivers helped carry the dead, each body a weight on his conscience. Young Jeff Miller, who'd manned the south barricade until Blackwood's men overwhelmed it. Old Tom from the saloon, who died protecting customers when the shooting started. Each name, each face added to the burden he carried. Sarah Mitchell tended the wounded, her hands steady, even when treating former Carson men who'd once threatened her land. "Bullet doesn't care what side you're on," she said simply, stitching up a reformed outlaw's shoulder. "Some of Blackwood's boys are talking," Hawkins reported, his own arm in a sling, giving up names, locations, bank accounts. His whole organization's unraveling like a cheap suit. Federal marshals are having a field day with the information. Good. Rivers watched Tommy helping to rebuild the burned livery stable, the boy's movements sure and purposeful, despite his exhaustion. "Boy's got a future now. Town, too." Cooper approached, his badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Federal marshals are on their way from territorial headquarters, going to need testimony about Yellow Fork, the Thompson gang, all of it. Time to bring everything into the light." "They'll have it," Rivers nodded. "Every detail, every connection. No more shadows for men like Blackwood to hide in." Bill Carson stood at his brother's fresh grave, his face carved from stone. The plot lay next to their father's, though now they knew the old man's heart failure had come from Blackwood's orders. "What happens to our lands now?" "Return them to the people they were stolen from," Rivers replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Marshal Cooper will oversee it, make it legal, make it right." The setting sun painted Redemption Creek's battered buildings in shades of gold and crimson. Workers were already repairing bullet holes, replacing broken windows, rebuilding what the battle had destroyed. But some wounds wouldn't heal so easily. night fell over the town, bringing with it a silence that felt strange after so much gunfire. Rivers cleaned his guns one last time in his room at the boarding house, knowing his work here was done. The weapons had never felt heavier. Sarah Mitchell found him there, bringing coffee and conviction. Don't blame yourself for the dead. They chose to stand, chose to fight for something bigger than themselves. Choices have consequences, Rivers replied, thinking of another choice made 15 years ago when he'd first strapped on his guns seeking vengeance. Yes, Sarah agreed, and sometimes the price is high, but freedom's worth the cost, or it ain't freedom at all. The price of justice had been high, but some debts can only be paid in blood. Redemption Creek had paid in full. James Blackwood's trial drew crowds from 3 territories. The courthouse in Redemption Creek, newly rebuilt after the battle, could barely contain the witnesses eager to testify against the fallen empire builder. Ranchers who'd lost land, widows who'd lost husbands, lawmen who'd been forced to look the other way, all came to see justice done. Rivers' testimony was the shortest but most damning. He spoke of one night 15 years ago, of a family destroyed by greed. His voice never wavered as he recounted finding his wife and daughter, of being left for dead. The scar on his face spoke louder than words, a permanent testament to Blackwood's cruelty. All these years, Blackwood sneered during cross-examination, hunting me like a ghost. Was it worth the price, Rivers? Worth becoming a killer yourself? Difference is, Rivers replied, his winter blue eyes boring into Blackwood, I never killed innocent people, never burned families for profit, never built an empire on blood money. The evidence mounted day by day. Carson ledgers revealed decades of corruption. Former gunmen turned state's evidence, detailing murders made to look like accidents. Bank records showed bribes paid to judges and officials across 3 territories. I sentence you to hang, the judge declared on the final day, for murders too numerous to count, for corruption of law and decent society, for crimes that stain the very soil of this territory. Blackwood showed no remorse, even at the end. Standing on the gallows, he fixed Rivers with one last hate-filled stare. You're still a fool, Rivers. There will always be men like me, always be empires built on blood. Maybe, Rivers replied from the crowd, but now they'll fear more than ghosts. They'll fear justice. The hanging drew less of a crowd than the trial. Most folks had already turned their eyes to the future. Cooper's deputies supervised the return of stolen lands, making right what greed had made wrong. Bill Carson, surprising everyone, helped with the transfers, working to redeem his family's name. Tommy found Rivers at sunrise the next day, packing his horse behind the livery stable. The boy, no, the man now, wore his deputy's badge with quiet pride. You're leaving, Tommy said, not a question. Ghost's work is done here. Rivers checked his saddle straps, his movements precise as always. Time for John Rivers to rest too. Where will you go? Rivers pulled out the worn photograph of his family, looking at it one last time before handing it to Tommy. The edges were frayed, but Sarah and Emily's smiles remained bright as ever. Keep it. Remember what we fought for. Remember why justice matters. As Rivers rode out of Redemption Creek, justice rode with him. His vengeance was complete, but more importantly, a town had found its soul. The law meant something again, and the weak no longer feared the strong. Behind him, Tommy watched until his mentor disappeared into the dawn, the photograph tucked safely in his vest pocket, close to his heart. A year passed. Redemption Creek prospered under Cooper's steady hand. The marshal's badge, once a symbol of corruption, now stood for justice. Tommy worked the badge with the same quiet competence his mentor had shown, the youngest lawman in the territory, but one of the most respected. Sarah Mitchell's ranch flourished, its fences never again broken by night riders. Other small ranchers returned, rebuilding what the Carsons had destroyed. The land bloomed under honest work, feed cattle replacing gun hands on the open range. Bill Carson sold most of his family's holdings, keeping only enough to run an honest operation. His remaining men traded their gun belts for ranch work, finding dignity in honest labor. The Carson name, slowly but surely, began to mean something different in the territory. Hawkins stayed on as Cooper's senior deputy, his experience helping to train a new generation of lawmen, young men who believed in justice, not just power, who understood that a badge meant service, not authority. The town grew, new businesses opened, families moved in, children played in streets once dominated by killers. The old faces remained, the blacksmith who'd fought beside rivers, the widow who'd refused to sell, the townspeople who'd found their courage when it mattered most. Stories spread about Redemption Creek, about how one ghost and a few brave souls had changed everything, about how justice, once awakened, couldn't be put back to sleep. Other towns took heart, standing up to their own tyrants. The ripples spread. Then one day a letter arrived for Tommy. The envelope was weathered, having passed through many hands to reach him. Inside was a simple message in a familiar hand. Some ghosts don't rest. Some just find new wrongs to right. Keep watching the horizon. That evening, Tommy stood on the marshal's office porch, his father's gun at his hip. A rider appeared in the distance, moving fast toward trouble somewhere. Tommy smiled, knowing his mentor's work continued. In the saloon, old-timers still told tales of the ghost who'd brought down an empire. But the real legacy lived in the daily life of Redemption Creek, in just laws fairly enforced, in land honestly worked, in people standing tall instead of living on their knees. River's vengeance had forged something unexpected, hope. Not in blood and gun smoke, but in the quiet courage of ordinary people choosing to do right. The ghost's legacy lived on, not in legend, but in justice served and courage found. Greater than. Sarah and Emily's graves lay peaceful in the Texas sunshine. Rivers knelt before them, placing fresh flowers on the weathered stones. 15 years of vengeance had finally brought him back here, to where it all began. "It's done," he whispered, touching the carved names. "Blackwood's dead, his empire's fallen. The men who hurt you can't hurt anyone else now." He paused, the weight of years settling on his shoulders. "Wish you could see the change you helped bring about, how your deaths meant something in the end." He touched the scar on his face, remembering everything that had led him here. Yellow Fork, where 13 killers learned to fear the dark. The Thompson gang, who'd helped plan that fatal night. Redemption Creek, where justice finally found its home. A trail of retribution carved across the west, leading back to this quiet place. A horse's hooves approached through the cemetery. Rivers didn't reach for his guns. He knew the sound of those particular hoofbeats. "Thought I'd find you here," Hawkins said, dismounting. His own scars had healed, but the memory of battle still showed in his eyes. More trouble brewing in Dakota Territory, another empire being built on broken lives, another Blackwood rising. Rivers stood slowly, looking one last time at the graves. Sarah would have understood. She always knew his heart better than he did. Emily would have been proud of the justice her death had spawned. "Some ghosts don't rest," he said, mounting his horse. The familiar weight of his guns settled against his sides, tools of a trade he couldn't seem to leave. They rode north together toward new battles. Behind them, the sun set on Redemption Creek's story. But somewhere, a young deputy named Tommy kept watch, ready to stand against darkness. The badge on his chest caught the fading light, a symbol of everything worth fighting for. Justice, like love, never truly dies. It just finds new hearts to carry it forward, new hands to hold the line between right and wrong. And sometimes, in the darkest night, it wears the face of a ghost. The legend of John Rivers would fade with time, become just another tale told in saloons and around campfires. But his real legacy lived on in every person who chose to stand against evil, every badge worn with honor, every wrong made right. Some debts can only be paid in blood, but some rewards come in peace restored and justice served. As Rivers rode toward the horizon, he carried both with him, the weight of vengeance fulfilled and the promise of justice yet to come.